This is John Felt, and this is the weekly weather briefing, March 10th, 2019. Over the last week, we had a couple areas of enhanced precipitation, had another atmospheric river of moisture over the northern part of California with a couple inches of rain and snow in higher elevations. Matter of fact, the snow is now above normal, well above normal. You might have seen some of the avalanches in parts of Colorado and California over the last week. Especially Colorado received quite a bit of high elevation snow. Over the southeast U.S., a couple inches of rain, again in that area. So we have two systems that I'm monitoring, and this is a jet stream. The coloring here is the wind speed, and that corresponds with some weather systems at the surface. Here's the first one that has moved through this weekend, and here's the second one that'll be moving through this week, and this is the one that we'll be watching to provide quite a bit of weather impacts as we go throughout the week. Now, I've been talking a while now about the water equivalent of the snowpack over the upper Midwest. This is the upper Mississippi River Basin and parts of the Missouri. And that represents anywhere from 4 to as much as 10 inches and maybe even locally more of liquid equivalent. So how that melts is going to be very important. Worst case scenario, it stays on the ground longer. Then we get a very moist, warm air mass that goes over it with rain. That'd be the worst case. Best case would be if we get in a pattern where it melts during the day, refreezes at night, and no additional rain. NOAA did come out with the spring flood outlook, and it does have the possibility of major flooding all the way down to St. Louis. Now keep in mind that the snowpack is in this area up here, and there's not much down in this area, so this is going to attenuate as it moves downstream, assuming no additional rainfall. So just a snow melt, it looks like that would be the crest. By the time it got down to St. Louis, it would start to attenuate south of St. Louis. Lots of scenarios there, so keep in tune. I'll be covering that weekly. So areas in green are quite wet, including, look at Northern California, so any additional rain will be enhancing runoff. Parts of the upper Midwest, parts of the southeast, scattered areas, quite wet. If we look at the Pacific Northwest, as well as including Washington and Oregon, you can see actually, despite some record snowfall in spots, the soils in many spots are still on the dry side. So over the last week, we had this persistent area of unusually cold weather from Montana, which is setting record cold across the upper Midwest, the northern tier of the U.S. The only spot over the last week that was above normal in yellow was the southwest U.S. So I'm always sort of intrigued with the progression of spring, probably because I can't wait till it gets here. And I'm in St. Louis, by the way, which has been struggling with getting any warm weather. But I've been talking about running into this wall, and this is the dew point, and the intrusions of dew point pushing further up into the middle part of the nation is one sign of spring. And the system that went through this weekend did bring dew points up. You can see as it's moving off to the east here, it's pushing this up in this region, but it's really just temporary. It's being now pushed back down to the south. So that's something we want to look at. Now look at the gradient here. We're looking at dew points in the 20s, which is quite dry, and right here on the other side of this front in the 60s. We can also see the soil temperatures are also not warming, so I think it's going to be a delayed spring in parts of the Midwest ag regions. We have the 60-degree dew point. This front's passed through. It's also cooling, pushing these cooling off soils. But this has really been hard to push too much to the north. And you can see that very clear on the spring leaf index anomaly. Red is where leaves have started to emerge earlier than normal. Look at Nashville, quite earlier, 20 days early. But I sort of said it's going to hit that wall, and you can begin to see it here. Look at the blue. Now it's running late, so it just sort of really sped up to that spot. It's hitting that cold air, and now it's slowing down. Oklahoma City now, the spring leaf emergence is later than normal. You go down to Dallas, it's above earlier than normal. So I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see more blue next week at this time. So we have a number of rivers that are running above normal. These are in blue and black, and the Pacific Northwest, primarily rivers well below normal. We also have a flood wave that's moving down the lower Mississippi, moderate to major, and it looks like it will be cresting this week along the reach of the lower Mississippi. Okay, so let's dig into the forecast here, and I think the primary, as far as the upper jet stream that I want to point out here, is over the central and eastern U.S. We're digging out a trough here, and this is going through 14 days. So the primary pattern we're having is we're digging out a trough here, and we're building up a ridge in this region here. And what that's going to do is result in cold air overspreading a large part of the nation, except the west. Now the west is going to be in the warm air, reflecting the ridge of high pressure. So what we have here is we have the dip of the jet stream in this area, pushing north here, so warm in the west, cool in the central and east. And it's a pretty big part of real estate for this cold weather. So anybody waiting for spring over the upper Midwest. Now there'll be a little opportunity this week before we get this transition, but once we get that transition, it looks like we're going through weeks 1 and 2, latter part of week 1 and week 2, continued below normal, and that's going to hold that much of that snowpack up there over parts of the upper Mississippi. Now with the transition this week, we're going to have a very deep low pressure system. Matter of fact, if you look at the pressure here, the atmospheric pressure, that could be, for this time of year, that could be a record low or near record low. We'll have to see what that is. But very deep low pressure system. Snow in the cold side, severe storms on the south side, rain along its path. And this is what it looks like. Southeast U.S., band of rain in the middle part of the U.S., and then some snow as well as we head forward throughout the week. So it's going to be sort of complicated what's going to happen with the snowpack. It looks like with some milder air ahead of this system, as well as some rain, it looks like we're going to erode a lot of this snow within generally the area in yellow. So that'll probably put some water in the upper Mississippi and start to work its way downstream. But we're going to add more snow in many areas in green, so it's going to sort of be a wash, I think. We're going to have some erosion, which will help, but we're going to add some up to the upper Midwest, far upper Midwest. So I think when it's all said and done, the situation's not going to change a whole lot. And because we're talking about below normal temperatures over the next couple weeks, a lot of that snow is going to stay in that region. I do think we're getting, though, into the climatological time of year where daytime highs, even with below normal temperatures, are going to get above freezing. So hopefully we'll melt some of that. Now the good news is this is a stable air mass and a dry air mass. So when we're looking at the next couple weeks, we're looking at large parts of the country settling down and having below normal precipitation. So I don't expect after this week's system to add a whole lot of additional snow within the upper Midwest. But with this system, it's going to be an active week until this front passes towards the middle part of the week. We're going to have heavy snow up to the north. We're going to have heavy rain ahead of the system. We're going to have some severe weather right in this region. And we're going to have some heavy snow and high winds behind the system. So very active, both winter-spring type characteristics, impacts as that goes through. And again, once it goes through, we're going to usher in a period of a week, maybe 10 days of below normal temperatures, below normal precipitation over the central and east. If you're in the west coast, you're going to enjoy some milder weather. That's this week's briefing. Hope you all have a great week. Take care.